Okay, so we were discussing basically the 9 planetary boundaries, and there's a zone for functional, optimal functionality for society, where we meet all the basic needs for humanity and function within the boundaries of the planet. And that's basically the zone of sustainability, if we call it. It's basically the functionality that we need to strive for in terms of keeping economic stability, keeping environmental preservation, and promoting social equity. So how do we adopt sustainable consumer habits? Essentially, for us to shift to that zone of proximal functionality, we need to start to shift our behavior and perceptions around sustainability. And in order to do that, we need to understand human psychology in order to understand how we need to shift to the sustainable movement. And how we do that essentially relies around how society functions. So social norm is quite interesting because essentially what we are seeing in the modern world is that people find it normal to actually live unsustainable lives. You know, people have 2 or 3 cars, people drive by themselves, people fly very often, people eat lots of meat, people consume lots of products, and these behaviors are considered quite normal. So essentially what we need to do is start to shift the social norm to be more sustainable. And in essence, how we do that is we start to make certain diets more acceptable in terms of how we live, certain ways of living, ways of consumption, minimalism, things like that. And this is essentially how we start to shift social norms to be more accepting of sustainable behaviors. And the more people that do that, the more we can promote the sustainability and the transition to these behaviors. How we do this as well is we need some social proof. So essentially, people are always looking for evidence where if sustainability is even happening. So a lot of people are driving their own personal cars, they eat lots of meat, and there's not that much social proof just yet. It is growing in momentum in terms of how we are shifting our behaviors though. So essentially, we need to look for and need to create social proof that sustainability is happening. So more of us need to adopt sustainable habits in terms of recycling, driving eco-friendly cars, promoting using renewable energy, promoting sustainable diets in terms of eating more plant-based foods and less meat consumption because of the methane related to that type of diet. And these are the sorts of changes that we need to see to enhance social proof of these changes and these adaptations in society. How we do this as well, social influence is a big thing. Essentially, we are biologically programmed to care about what other people think of us. And really, if we start to change our behaviors, we might worry about how other people may think about us if we start to change our behaviors. So we really need to make it okay for people to change to being more sustainable and changing their behaviors and make it socially acceptable in order to live a more sustainable lifestyle. And how we can do this is really through something called choice editing. We all have a choice as consumers to make sustainable choices and change our sustainable habits. Sometimes it's difficult for us to change our habits and change our choices, essentially because society has been conditioned into having an easy route and an easy way into consuming. So essentially, we need to become more mindful consumers, and we'll give you a checklist after this talk as to how you can do that, as to how you can consider being a more sustainable consumer. Essentially, we need to shift the mainstream consumer mindset to be more sustainable and to shift the mindset for consumers to be more considerate of the things that they buy in relation to the environment and sustainability itself. And in some essence, there is already some evidence of this from people changing their diet to plant-based, people using alternative transport methods like public transport and, for example, yachting if it's a further distance, and walking to work. Simple things like this Also, being a minimalist is another way we can do this. So there are ways we can edit our choices to be more sustainable. One way that we also need to consider the overall change and how society works in general is threat. And clear evidence for this is COVID-19. We were all faced with the threat of COVID-19, and it was made immediate by the government. So we all had to shift and change our behaviors to basically condition ourselves to live a new lifestyle. And in essence, this is kind of what we need to do in relation to sustainability. We are facing far more or far greater threats than COVID-19. We are facing massive ecological threats that are causing far greater and long-term damages to the planet. So essentially, we need to perceive all these global issues, the 9 planetary boundary issues, as massive threats and start to treat them as threats in terms of from a top level all the way to the bottom level, from governmental level all the way to society. And if we start to treat these environmental pressures as threats, then we'll start to drive this sustainable change and behavior. Essentially, in terms of sustainability and our lifestyles, there are 3 main factors that contribute to the unsustainability of our lifestyles in essence, and that's mobility, transport. People need to commute and travel everywhere, and essentially this is a major contributor for greenhouse gas emissions and factors that contribute to the demise of the planet, I suppose, in some way, in terms of increasing greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. Eating and drinking is another factor, and in essence, a lot of our related lifestyle-related impacts come from diet. So in essence, what we can do to shift this behavior is to eat more plant-based diets and eat more foods that have less impact on the environment, be it that they use less water, they produce less greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. And the last impact is really energy. In essence, energy is one of the biggest factors that are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So in essence, we all need to try and drive the change for sustainable and renewable energy. If we can all do that, then that's a great way for us to shift to a more sustainable economy. There's been some studies related to this, and basically the majority of society around the world agree that we need lifestyle changes in order to start to address these global issues. So it's all up to us to really make these changes and to transition our lifestyles, much like what we did with COVID-19, and start to change our behaviors in a positive way. So now is a really good time that we can do that. How we can also do this is through classical conditioning. Essentially, we can incentivize people to reduce their impact on the environment while being rewarded for their efforts. So kind of like an incentivization, and we can gratify them for their efforts as well. So that's how we can condition people to start to adapt and mold their behaviors to be more sustainable. And the way we do this is really by giving them feedback. So in essence, we can give people feedback for the efforts that they do in daily life. So there's certain actions that are more sustainable. For example, eating a plant-based meal, walking to work instead of driving, just to name a few. We can give people positive feedback and positive reinforcement in order to change their behaviors on a daily basis and allow them to consider being more sustainable for the betterment of themselves and society, as well as the planet. In terms of sustainability, we really need to drive the 5 A's. Essentially, if we are to shift the economy to be more sustainable, we need to make sustainable options more available. That being said, we need to make electric cars, for example, more available, public transport more available, plant-based diet options, and more sustainable options in general in terms of transport and lifestyle-related impacts. These options also need to be more accessible. So sustainable options need to be more physically accessible. You know, generally unsustainable options are quite accessible. So those options need to be limited in some sense. And really, we need to promote more sustainable products in order to start to drive the change in our economy, where we can really demand more sustainable products, and the production of those sustainable products will be higher as well. Essentially, what we need to do as well is make sustainable products more attractive, and we can do this by making these eco-friendly products more or better priced in terms of making it more cost effective. And we need to really put tax on products that are more impactful on the environment, such as carbon tax, for example. And that goes on to the next point of affordability. We really need to price these options in such a way where we can benefit the economy to preserve the environment and promote social equity. It's very important for us to be aware of these factors as well, and be aware of sustainable options. If we are aware, we can make the right choices as consumers. It's not really up to consumers entirely, though. It's up to the whole planet. And essentially, we need systemic change to drive this sustainable economy change and this direction into a more sustainable economy. Essentially, what we really need to do is start to promote more renewable energy, promote people eating a more eco-friendly and healthy diet as well. In essence, we can reduce a lot of other issues on top of this, like heart disease and diabetes, and in turn also improve the environment as well. So it's really entire systemic change that we need to see throughout the planet, and we need to start to make these changes in order to build this sustainable economy between the balance of environment, society, and the economy as well. In essence, it's all up to us as consumers. We need to demand sustainable products, and therefore sustainable products will be supplied by the economy and by producers, in essence, and then we will drive this sustainable momentum towards a more equitable economy that has a balance and that functions within the zone of stability within the planet and for society as well. So really within the zone of proximal functionality, as doughnut economics speaks about as well. So sustainable demand and sustainable supply are really the important factors of this talk. Okay, and thank you so much for listening to this talk. Sorry about that disruption. If you have any questions, please feel free to pose them on the chat. And yeah, please fire away. Thanks for listening to my talk. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please find out more about our business EcoFoot as well. In essence, we are trying to drive this circular economy and basically promote a more sustainable economy around the world. So I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I really am looking forward to reaching out to some of you. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I was reading over everything. Very excited about the mobile app. That looks really cool. Any way you can tell us about when that app is going to launch, or is that still the process you're working on?
Yes, we'll be launching in September. So please look forward to our launch of the application. In essence, our application, I don't really get a chance to speak about that too much, but what we do is we guide people to reduce their environmental impact. So very similar as to what I talked about today. We reward people or incentivize people for their efforts, and then we connect them to sustainable solutions. So we're really driving that sustainable economy that I was talking about today.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the eco coin, like that circular system that you got going there. It looks really neat. As somebody
Thank
who
you.
works in festivals and the music industry a lot, I would love to see that integrated into like the festival realm somehow. I think that would be super beneficial and reach a large audience. Great. Well, thank you so
For
much
sure.
for talking with us. Thanks so much to all of you in the audience for joining us here at the Life Society Pavilion Stage. I was just notified that the one